if you said to someone every time that you wake up, if you get out of bed, you spin around, and you clap 3 times, your day is going to go awesome. Okay? And you tried that once, you spun around and clapped 3 times, and it went awesome. Like, I'm relatively convinced that, maybe the next day you want to see if it's not awesome if you don't do it, but I'm relatively convinced that in the long term, if this continues, like, you're going to get up, you're going to spin around, you're going to clap 3 times. Once you've figured out that despite that seemingly being unrelated or being a weird solution, that you'll accept it once you try it out and you understand the odd truth of it.
So how do you distinguish between that and superstition then? Or people believe things like you can't walk under a mirror or something.
I thought
don't even know
under a ladder?
Yeah, that's what it is. You can't walk under a ladder. See, I don't know my superstitions.
Yeah, it's like the weird, like the black cat crosses your path.
Yeah,
or
like
step on a
things like that. Like,
crack.
how do you distinguish between the people who say, well, I've never walked under a ladder, and the one time that I did, I had a bad day, so now I'm never going to walk under a ladder again.
Yeah, so
like, how do you distinguish between superstition, or do you think there's validity to superstition in that sense?
Well, so I guess as a starter, let's talk about the first thing first, which is how does one go about determining whether something is like true or not, right? And
true versus superstitious.
Yeah, and I would say you go about it with a number of repeated trials, and if like you bring the scientific method to the table.
Okay, so you need So I'm thinking about
so with the standing up and clapping. Like the first day, if you have a great day, okay. And then maybe the second day, you intentionally don't do it. Okay? And if the day goes bad, then okay. Like, or I guess in that case, the day could also still go good potentially. But
you need to be, I guess.
You would need a number of different trials. You need a lot of trials.
The other thing is not only just trials, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you can control the outcome reliably. So
yes.
Like I'm thinking about when we do problem solving stuff, like I do this kind of stuff at work, and it's like if we think that we've found the solution to the problem, we need to be able to show we can cause the problem to
come back
yep. reliably
yes.
and repeatedly by altering the variable we've identified.
You should be able to flip it like a switch.
Exactly.
Yes.
You need to be able to do that. And I guess maybe that's what you're saying is like, if your superstition can't do that.
Yeah. So, bringing it back to some of what I was talking about before, like with the dairy and gluten-free diet that I've been doing for how long, there was, in that 2-year period of time, an obvious, very clear, very direct, very short time delay between having one of those things and a very specific ailment that felt a particular way on top of that. And like you said, you can flip it like a switch. Like I can go eat a bunch of dairy and then within 24 hours have an issue, have a very clear, massive issue proportional to the amount of dairy consumed, and then not do it for a week and not have that issue again.
Have you tried that at all in recent years, or considered like just kind of recalibrating your switch, I guess? Because you've also talked about how you're like, I'm not interested in trying dairy again or trying gluten because I found something that works and it works, so like it doesn't matter.
That's a good question. There was a time where I accidentally consumed something that had both gluten and dairy. It was not a massive amount of this thing, but it was a decent amount of it, and I had a notable response to that within a 24-hour period of time. So, no, I do not toy with it on a frequent basis, but I'm confident that it has not entirely been eliminated. And, I'll speak to that briefly about, like not wanting to go back. There's definitely a hesitation where I feel like I've gotten used to a certain way of living now. Even though it is definitely annoying at times, I've gotten used to it. And going back and thinking about the negatives that most definitely could and would likely come back should I no longer adhere to said diet, I think like that's not something that that at least I want to mess and play around with at this point, because it was so painful at times.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I guess I'm just challenging the idea of,
yeah. And I'm not saying that it's not worth testing.
You need to be able to control it with a switch. Like,
yeah, but how often do you need to test that switch after you've verified it the first time?
Yeah. I guess
I'm not saying that it's not worth testing or that I shouldn't, but I'm definitely hesitant, since the anticipated conclusion is I'm going to have some serious stomach issues and or head issues for.
So then how do you also consider if someone potentially is experiencing a level of placebo, that their trials are maybe warped, or you could make the argument that they might be warped by a lens of placebo? So like, someone is convinced that every day that they wear, mismatched socks, their day goes better, and every day they don't, their day is bad.
Sure.
Right? Like, how much of that is maybe placebo or self-fulfilling when you have in your mind, today's going to be a good day because I'm wearing mismatched socks.
Sure. So I guess let's speak to, I think there are two things there. One, how do you make sure that, at least in the initial diagnosis, that something is not a placebo? And especially if you're going to make, let's say, a radical change, because the mismatched socks, who really cares, right? But if you're going to make some radical change in diet, in way that you're living your life, in like maybe you're moving somewhere, right? Like these big changes, you definitely want to verify. So what I would say to the how to verify is, can you make it blind somehow? So earlier I said that I accidentally ate something, okay? What happened was, funny enough, my mom, who adheres to the same diet, accidentally purchased something that had dairy in it.
Yeah.
I asked, so I consumed this thing.
Multiple times,
and in like decent quantities.
In like a weekend.
Yes. Yeah. And then my stomach hurt, and then I asked, did that have dairy? And I was actually told no. And then we purchased this product, figured out it had dairy.
Like months later.
Yes, months later, we figured out it had dairy. So then, in my mind, right there,
we purchased it because it was so good. Because
it was so good because it had dairy. Yeah. So to me, there's the blind test, and like it's not a placebo, at least with that. Now, certain things you could say, how do I placebo test? Maybe there's not a great solution. Addressing the second part of your question, let's say with like the socks thing, okay? There is this is going to differ for everyone, but if you made some unbelievably small sacrifice, like putting on mismatched socks intentionally, or getting out of bed, spinning around, and clapping 3 times every morning, okay? Like these relatively small sacrifices, if that is a placebo, even if it is, perhaps it's still worth it.
Yeah, or maybe it's something like, I mean, maybe you just really love mismatched socks, and you just there's a psychological aspect of like
self-fulfilling.
I feel good today because I know I have mismatched socks and I really like
that. But I'm saying, if you get up, if you put on the mismatched socks, if you feel better, at least in this vacuum, like, who cares why?
Okay, so what if someone is like, well, I feel better in this room of my house because I have salt crystals in there. And I have amethyst, and that means vitality. I don't know. I don't know the crystal stuff. But, well, what if it's just, well, I like purple amethyst, and so I feel happy and calm when I'm in this room. But you're marketing it as, no, this stone carries some level of, like,
Sure.
some
So,
level of, like, divine tranquility.
yeah. So what I would say is in the wearing mismatched socks example, I specifically said, like, what are the negative consequences? And who cares if it's, like, just with you, okay? As soon as you start causing externalities, or as soon as there's some negative that's introduced, now we're changing the cost-benefit analysis, right? Because earlier we were saying, you're throwing on mismatched socks and you feel happier, okay? If we try and take the mismatched socks, okay, and extrapolate it to the degree that you're talking about the crystals, okay? If you're marketing these mismatched socks as lucky mismatched socks, okay, and they are not that way for everyone, now we have a negative externality. Now I start taking issue with it. When you start promoting
like
that
an objective falsehood, when you say that, no, when you take it from, no, mismatched socks, I just like them. I like to look at them.
yeah,
Or like this crystal, I like how it looks. I like how it complements the colors in this room. And so that makes me feel like this room, or it contributes to, this room just feels like a nice room. It feels peaceful.
yeah,
When you take it from that into like, no, you need, like, you should put a crystal in your house because this is just how it is. Maybe the answer is when you extend it out and say, no, it's not just something that I like and makes me happy. No, it's something that you've kind of almost made an idol out of it. I don't know.
I'm gonna push back about that a little, and like we'll address this at a later date with maybe talking about and defining what truth is specifically.
Sure.
But I would hesitate there, and I would say when it causes negative externalities, because let's say you sold socks, okay, and they actually were like some lucky socks, like
Let's accept that
know.
premise.
Like just accept the premise, which is something that
yes,
we do a lot.
that is one
here.
of the rules.
Just accept the premise and move on to the point first, okay? But if you were able to create actually lucky socks, and you sold them and marketed them as lucky socks, and every single person that bought them and wore them in whatever your instructed fashion was, if every single person that did that actually experienced that luck, I don't have an issue with it. Because there isn't, like to me, the issue is it comes down to false advertisement, which is a form of negative externality. If you say to people, and this is where I think that there are maybe some negative criticisms for some of these other methods, and this is why I do not go around advocating, oh, well, everyone should be dairy free, okay? There are plenty of people that handle dairy totally fine. There are plenty of people that have a totally reasonable consumption of dairy and get nutrients and plenty of great things from having dairy. It's not this closed and shut case, dairy is terrible and horrible. Dairy is not good for some people. Like if you're lactose intolerant and you're having lactose, you're having dairy, like
if you're literally allergic
not
to
a
dairy,
good idea. If you're allergic to dairy, meaning you're having some anaphylactic reaction to dairy, don't have dairy. But if you have a totally fine relationship with it, you're not having health negatives, maybe you try and remove it and there's no negative and you bring it back and you're like, I just don't want to have to deal with it, great. Don't go dairy free. I'm not advocating it. I think the issue is when some people come in and say, well, this must be the way, like this is the way everyone should be doing this. And I think that's some of why you see people pushing back so much on like the vegan vegetarian thing, because oftentimes people in those communities, not everyone, but oftentimes You see people in those communities preaching it as if it's the only means of being healthy, as if there could never be a negative for anyone ever. And in general, when people say wide swaths of the population, this is the best thing for literally every single person out there, with no asterisk, with no qualifiers, with no, well, actually, it's not everyone, it's 95% of people. Okay?
So then
you should be concerned.
Yeah, so what do you mean when you say negative externality then? Because, I mean, just playing devil's advocate, the retort could be, oh, well, what harm are you really causing by advocating for people to wear mismatched socks? Like, who cares? You're not causing harm to people.
Well, if you're just advocating for people to wear mismatched socks and it's only positive, you're just like, woo, go mismatched socks. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, fine, the crystals. If you're, or, some of those more Reiki healing or whatever. If you're sitting here preaching that these crystals have these powers or whatever, or if you are going to sit here and say, no, not just mismatched socks make me happy and everyone should do it. No, mismatched socks carry a level of divine power to make your day happy.
Yeah. So the negative externality is someone goes out and purchases the mismatched socks, purchases the crystals. Let's say you go out and you purchase those things with the assumption that it's going to result in a specific thing. If that thing doesn't come true, because that thing wasn't designed to do that, like with the crystals, like with whatever. Gosh, I'm going to get railed by people in the crystals community, aren't I? If you go out and you purchase a freaking
Hey, make your argument
amethyst
for the crystals. Do it. Make your argument. I'd love to hear the
Fine.
argument.
Let's hear.
Like, honestly.
Apart from, I guess they look pretty. They fit my room.
I mean, they do. They look beautiful.
Yeah.
But
rocks can be pretty. Plants can be pretty.
Yeah.
Plenty of things can be pretty and complement a given room. So, getting back to it, if they say everyone should go out and buy amethyst crystals, okay? And you go out and buy amethyst crystals, believing wholeheartedly that there is going to be luck that comes upon you because you are purchasing this amethyst crystal and you have it up on your shelf in your living space or whatever, and that doesn't come true, then that's a negative externality because somebody just spent a bunch of time and...
Or you're getting into scam territory.
Yeah,
too.
Yeah, we're just talking about a scam now.
Yeah.
It's just...
Or the freaking, Joel Osteens who are...
It's just different levels of scam.
You gotta give money to my church and everything will go well for you, like...
Yeah, it's just different levels of scam. And that's not to say that everything needs to work for everyone every single time. Like they have pants and shirts and hats that say one size fits all. And it's like, no, it doesn't.
It doesn't fit
No,
me.
it doesn't. It's like, I put on some hat and it's like, this thing doesn't fit my head. It's not one size fits all. Okay? So...
Yeah, I mean, there's nuance to it. I'm just posing a question or a thought that I had. I'm not...
By the way, I do think that those things should say one size fits most. Because it somewhat borders on false advertising. I think it's generally accepted that people understand that it doesn't always fit all, but it should say one size fits most. I think
Precision of language.
Yes, precision of language, Jonas.